Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Stargirl, which I wasn't expecting to do. So the past week brought us the ending of Stargirl, not just for its third season, but the series as a whole after it was cancelled, about a month or so back. I know, time's a weird thing. Now, of course, this wasn't meant to be the natural or organic ending for the show, whichever way you want to put it, though it did sort of fit well in regards to specifically the Sylvester Pemberton storyline side of things, stemming from what we saw, I guess, like the end credit scene of season 1 when he shows up at Pat's old apartment, and that sort of gets the ball rolling for what then played out in season 2 and then fully in season 3. Now, of course, due to it not being the natural end for the show, there was some setup, and build up and, seeds planted for other storylines and just overall future events earlier in the season that we are unfortunately not going to see, play out or bloom or whatever it might be, which I think most people just assumed it would happen in a Stargirl season 4 or maybe a season 5 or just something like that, a future season. But something did come out over the past couple of days that actually reveals it would have been much bigger than that, as in a completely new show, a spin-off. So Jeff Johns, the showrunner, creator, everything Stargirl, had sat down with TV Line, around the time of the, release of the series finale for Stargirl. And we did actually go over an interview with him from TV Line the day after the finale. But it didn't involve anything that's actually brought up in this piece we're going to go over right now. So I guess it was saved just to be like another article piece, which I guess makes sense. So yeah, in this discussion, the reveal of a potential and pretty much set up spin-off from the past season of Stargirl was brought up, which sounds like a pretty damn cool idea, which plays into what Stargirl as a show was, but the other side of the JSA mantle is being handed down, which I never really thought about before being a thing. But yeah, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and all this stuff. Very curious to hear what you guys have to say and whether you would have wanted to have seen this spin-off play out, because I'm sure most would, but if you have any different thoughts, let me know. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, want to show your support, all that, why not drop a like on the video to do all that? So yeah, let's just go over this TV Line piece, because I think it's just the easiest way to go about it, and then we'll break it down and give our thoughts, obviously, afterwards. Not only was DC's Stargirl an apparent casualty of the changes on the way at the CW under new owner Nexstar, but a potential spin-off may have been thrown out with the bathwater. That's an interesting phrase there. Back in season 2, the DC series introduced the character of Jenny Hayden, or Jenny Lynn Hayden, aka Jade, the daughter of Green Lantern Alan Scott. Having aged out of a group home, Jenny at the time was struggling with her own recently discovered green energy-based powers, while also wondering where her twin brother Todd had landed. Jenny's story resumed midway through Stargirl's third and now final season with a two-part Infinity Inc. arc when Richard Swift, aka The Shade, transported both Courtney and Pat to the Helix Institute for Youth Rehabilitation in Civic City to where Jenny had tracked Todd. It was discovered that Todd, who in the comics lore comes to be known as Obsidian, had shadow-based powers which Jenny eventually helped him control. As the Infinity Inc. arc drew to a close, Pat convinced Richard to serve as mentor of sorts to Todd and Jenny and teach them to fine-tune their natural-born powers. The twins agreed to the arrangement, provided that Jenny could first make good on a prior commitment to help out Sandy Hawkins, aka Sandman Wesley Dodds' nephew in New York. Now, if you had sensed that all of the above was laying the groundwork for a potential spin-off series, that is, on an Earth where Stargirl had found undeniable rating success and or the CW hadn't changed hands, you would be quite right. Yes, I think there was a great show in Infinity Inc. with the Shade and Jade hunting down the remaining family members, the sons and daughters and nephews and nieces of the original JSA, those who were born with power that didn't yet unlock it, Stargirl creator Jeff Johns shared with TV Line earlier this week. That prospective offshoot would illustrate a really interesting difference between Courtney's JSA and what Jenny's JSA would have been, Johns contended. The spin-off would have revolved around characters that were born with powers that had to learn how to handle this power they inherited, whereas Courtney's JSA was comprised of people who became superheroes through artifacts and not necessarily a bloodline. Johns was also high on the new team's most unlikely mentor, played by fan favourite Jonathan Cake, grumpily guiding Jenny and co. I think there would have been something fun about watching the Shade as a villain trying to reform himself by recreating a new superhero team, Johns noted. There would have been something really compelling about that as a show. So my overall thoughts on this is that I do love the contrast between people born with and just overall, I guess, struggling and just learning their new powers versus what we had on Stargirl with artifacts and items and all that stuff giving the particular people powers. Like we have Courtney or Stargirl with the staff, Wildcat's suit, Owlman's hourglass, and Dr. Midnight's goggles. I mean, a Thunderbolt's pen as well. And I guess you could even chuck in Stripe the robot as well. Now, I always knew that none of the kids actually had embedded powers, I guess outside of Cameron and to a degree Cindy, but they weren't explicitly in the JSA, especially at the beginning. But I had never really thought about focusing on the other side of that with people born with the powers and having to learn to live with them and just learn to control them. Of course, I guess we saw the struggle with Cameron this season and a bit last season to a degree with all of that, and I guess even Cindy as well. Though she really wasn't born with it, she just had to grow up with it due to what her father did. But I guess at the same time, it's still having to come to grips and learn something that's actually embedded within you. And I guess the thought of this makes that final scene in the season 3 and I guess now series finale even better, with the Shade leading the JSA museum through, that he had gone on this journey with Jenny, with Todd, and with all these other, descendants and, family members that inherited these powers that they'd picked up along the way, and reformed himself from being a villain to, I guess, being a part of the JSA, as Jay Garrick does reference when he arrives in. So they sort of address this potential spin-off and I guess the journey that would have happened there, I guess specifically with the Shade, in that final scene as well, even though we don't even realize it until this came out right now, which makes it even cooler. Now, in regards to who they would have picked up, of course, they already mentioned Sandy Hawkins, who is mentioned in that final scene in the museum. They do mention Sand. I don't know if I think it is just Sandman, I think in the comics, Sandy Hawkins, but I guess to distinguish between Sandman, the original one, and this one, I think they just say Sand. So that was Sandy Hawkins. They also do mention Damage, which is I guess a descendant of Atom, or Atom Smasher, or Al Pratt. They do mention Atom in the second or third last episode of this season. And they weren't talking about the Ray Palmer Atom. They were talking about Al Pratt, I'm pretty sure. So that's another descendant there. So I would have been really, really interested to see who they would have picked up along that journey. And I guess it would have sort of played somewhat similar to Stargirl season 1. Like Courtney, we introduced to her. We know she's a hero now with the staff and everything like that. And then we had those episodes where we slowly introduced Yolanda into Wildcat, Beth and Rick into Owlman, and Dr. Midnight and everything like that. So I guess it would have played out very similar, but in a more, I guess, complex way, because these people had to learn how to use their powers. And in some cases, it wouldn't surprise me too much if they didn't even know they had these powers. So you might get Jenny and Todd and the Shade showing up and going, oh, you're this person, that person, whatever it is, you have this ability. And I had no idea. Maybe they had some weird stuff where they had experienced some odd things that just thought, okay, maybe just acting weird, but it was actually their powers trying to come out. So with Sandy Hawkins, it could be some weird dream stuff that's going on, and they just thought they were having nightmares or tripping out or something, or they had some bad chicken the night before, but it's actually their powers coming through. So this would have been actually a pretty damn cool way to see that side of things in comparison to what we had in Stargirl, specifically first season, but also with season 2 with Jakeem, and even season 2 and 3 with Cameron and everything like that. Now, one thing that isn't really overly addressed here, which I was, maybe it was, and maybe it's another article, I'm not too sure, but it is actually, I guess it's slightly referenced, and that's the Helix Institute. Now, if there was a spin-off that was being set up, and you said there was only one being set up from what we saw in season 3, of course that Jenny and Todd in the Shade going off was its thing, but that could have just been a side story that we picked up with in season 4 or something like that. But it felt like the Helix Institute with, Mr. Bones and all those characters there, that really felt like it might have been the spin-off they were going for, because Mr. Bones was about it took Courtney's words in regards to keeping all these people locked up here. Maybe it was time for them to, go out into the world and be heroes as well. So that could have been a spin-off there. Maybe that could have been something that was addressed in this other spin-off with Jenny and Todd and the Shade, is that they do run into the Helix Institute, because Todd was connected to the Helix Institute, and I guess to a degree Jenny as well now. So maybe that's where that storyline could have played into things. And maybe even one or two of the members that were within the Helix Institute could have folded over into this new JSA or something like that. So that was something that I thought they might have been setting up there if it was a potential spin-off, but maybe the two could have just been combined or played into each other and everything like that. So it's disappointing we're not going to get this, because it sounds really cool, and we just would have built out that universe even more, bringing in more of those JSA mantle holders and everything like that. But you know, sometimes you get stuff, sometimes you don't. I just love that the fact that like it was sort of referenced in that final scene in the JSA museum 10 years in the future without being like overly explained at the same time. Like this gives us more context that leads to that final scene with the shade in the museum and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a shame we don't get to see it, but at the same time, we can all just use our imaginations because we got it pretty much spelled out for us. So I guess that's good enough, at least. It's like we can compensate with it. It's a compensation prize, if you want to call it. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it, show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on this stuff. Would you have liked to have seen the Jenny show, even the Helix show, both of them combined, playing into the same sort of storyline, all that? Let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.